What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. If you missed it last night, we talked about the Google console rumors. So if you missed that one, it's up in the cards above. A lot of people were really interested, and that was really making the rounds yesterday. And it's really fun to think about the possibility of another console entering the marketplace from a company that is at least able to do it with the amount of money that they have. Should be fun to keep an eye on. Now, we have a bunch of stuff to get into today. We got to talk a bit about some new Nintendo trademarks. Of course, Nintendo trademarks always bring hope, don't they? And we'll go over some of those. We did have Mr. Furukawa from Nintendo actually become the president. We're going to take a look at that as well. First, though, let's start with some of the quick news, some of the smaller bits. Cat Quest 2 has actually been announced. They put a teaser trailer out. Now, if you missed the first one, I actually liked it. It was a fun little action RPG style game. It was on a whole bunch of systems. I remember it was on mobile platforms, of course, then it went to the Switch. I actually played it a good bit on the Switch and liked it. And the second one looks like more of the same, except it will also have a co-op mode to it. So you and another person can actually play through it together. It's not due out till 2019, but it looks pretty good, and I like the first one, so I'm sure I'll enjoy this one as well, and I'll be checking it out. Also, ToeJam and Earl back in the groove, which of course was the game that people really wanted, and then they got it crowdsourced and everything back in 2015, is ToeJam and Earl. People loved that series back on the Genesis, and they were bringing it back. It got crowdsourced, and they had a publisher with Adult Swim Games. Well, they appear to have dropped them, and they are now shooting for a fall release on consoles and PC. This was their statement they released. Going forward, Adult Swim Games is no longer going to be our publisher. Instead, we are going back to self-publishing. Adult Swim Games has some other big titles they plan to launch this summer, so when Back in the Groove pushed back, we both agreed that it made sense for them to hand us the reins rather than taking a chance on this getting pushed back anymore. Also, I'd like to say how deeply grateful I and all of us here at Human Nature Studios are to Adult Swim Games. We wouldn't have gotten this game to this point without them. Seriously, thank you, Adult Swim. It looks like this is, I guess, an amicable break here, but we are expecting it to come out this fall. They did talk about how they are going to be submitting it for certification to Nintendo, and then of course Sony, Microsoft, and then I guess Steam at that point in the following weeks and months, shooting for that fall release. So if you've been looking forward to ToeJam and Earl back in the groove, and maybe you were someone who backed it back in 2015, you've been waiting, it looks like finally, later this year, you'll be able to play ToeJam and Earl. Hopefully, it lives up to those expectations, or hopefully it just fills that nostalgia that you've been looking for. And finally, if you are a Yokai Watch fan, you'll be happy to know that the 3DS isn't quite gone yet. We've talked about that, how third-party developers will continue to support it, and Nintendo appears to be bringing over some Yokai Watch goodness for people who really like it, except these appear to be slightly different. See, these are called Yokai Watch Blasters Red Cat Corpse and White Dog Squad. These are going to hit the 3DS September 7th, and these are slightly different. See, Yokai Watch is generally an RPG. I'm not the biggest Yokai Watch fan, but I do understand that they are very popular in Japan, not as much in the West. However, these are co-op action titles, and these apparently are going to be much different than the typical RPGs that fans have been used to. The game is set to feature over 400 playable yokai. Of course, each of them have their own strengths, weaknesses, skills, and soultimate moves. Then, of course, there's two different versions, right? And they'll have their exclusive bosses and missions. So I guess if you want everything, you buy them both, but they seem to be kind of beaten down on that with Pokemon and even Fire Emblem now. So there you go, you buy both. Guys, with that smaller news out of the way, let's get started. So Nintendo did have their 78th General Assembly of the shareholders, and they did have to do a few things here. They had to vote to bring in Mr. Furukawa to replace Mr. Kimishima as the acting president. That all went through no problem. So yes, we do have now officially a new president and head of Nintendo, and we're going to see where that kind of takes us, because Kimishima did an outstanding job, right? For when he was kind of brought in out of nowhere, he had to kind of take the reins and get the switch out. He did a great job, right? Bridging that gap to Mr. Furukawa here. And we're going to see where he goes from here. They also had quite a few questions. None of them were really crazy or anything. They asked them about crossplay. They didn't seem that interested in talking much about crossplay, just that they are continuing to do their best to keep in contact and I guess make relationships with other companies, I guess like a Microsoft, for example, and of course through Psyonix and Rocket League and everything. And then they also asked them about Labo, because Labo is kind of viewed as it's not selling the best, but Nintendo does say that their expectations have been met. and they seem to be viewing Labo as a different entity from the normal game. See, they say with their normal games, it explodes up, right? When they first put a game out, massive sales right in the beginning. You know, like we just saw Mario Tennis, 125,000. It probably won't be that same amount next week. It'll go down. They always see those big sales, like with every other game, right? Usually the first week sales are massive, and then it kind of trickles down. Nintendo sees it differently. They see Labo as something that will kind of steadily sell throughout, right? And they're looking more towards holiday. They didn't release it during a holiday. And then they even say like summer vacation for kids because it's geared towards kids. So Labo seems to be a slow burn. It's not something we're going to see right away and it just be massive or anything, but it's not exactly failing or anything for them either. It's kind of, it's okay by them, right? They're okay with it. They're also questioned about the 20 million Switch units that they're looking to move this fiscal year. Some of the investors, shareholders, are a little concerned about it. They don't see, I guess, the titles, the big pushes to move these systems out. They see Pokemon, of course, not a mainline Pokemon game, so I get to have some reservations there. Smash, of course, they see that. But they are, of course, comparing it to the first year of the Nintendo Switch. Nintendo even says, look, the first quarter is something that everyone's looking at right now, but we have more stuff coming. So we are still sticking to that 20 million Switch number that they're trying to push, and that's going to be tough. They even say it's going to be challenging, but they're pretty confident, and they apparently have some more stuff for people coming up. They also touched on the online, about being, people seem a little concerned about it being charged and everything with what's shown now, and Nintendo, again, they say, well, look, we have more stuff we're going to show you guys. We want it to be very convenient. We have no idea what that means, but okay, sure, why not? And they're going to give us more information as we get closer to that September release of the online service, where we have to then obviously pay for it. So we're going to see a lot more stuff. Nothing crazy here, though. It seems like they mostly really just showed up to vote to bring in the new president. They had some questions. There was like a dozen questions. Nothing really crazy. No big revelations happen or anything, but there's now a new president with Nintendo, so there you go. Next up, let's talk about EA and Amy Hennig. They had been working with Visceral Studios on an Uncharted-esque Star Wars game. It was a very linear, story-based Star Wars game. People were really excited about it because it sounded different. It sounded interesting. EA was not as interested, right? Where they come in, they shut down Visceral Studios, disband them. I'm sure a lot of them hopefully got jobs and everything, but disbanded them, and it turns out that Amy Hennig is no longer with EA, actually left in January. Eurogamer actually did a full interview, questions and everything, and found out that not only is she not with them anymore, but the game that EA Vancouver is now working on, because remember they sent that project over to another studio. It appears like it's nothing like what she was working on originally, and I guess she was like, you know what, I'm going to leave, I'm going to go make my own studio, which she appears to be trying to do, a new independent studio, and it doesn't seem the best right now, because they did shelve that Star Wars games. Apparently, according to her, what they're working on now is barely, I mean, maybe some assets, but barely what she was working on, and honestly, it's kind of a shame, because that vision that they had could have been really... What if that game came out and it was like a straight up 9.5 out of 10? Maybe it was a 10 out of 10 for some people. Maybe it was like a kind of like what God of War turned out to be for Sony. What if it turned into something like that, where, yeah, you don't have all these monetization strategies, but you put out a game that's just phenomenal. It has the Star Wars logo on it. It's teen rated, and you just sell, 15 million copies of this thing, 20 million copies. That seems successful to me. I would have liked to have just seen it. Unfortunately, it sounds like we're probably never going to see this at all. So I do hope somebody out there gets information on it, whether they have files of it or something, and they bring it to light, and we can actually see what they were working on. And if it really was that bad of a game, because EA they did not seem interested in bringing that out, and that's a shame. Right now, they're working on an open world style game over there, and we'll see. We kind of heard a little bit about it at EA's presser. It's a really bad reveal, obviously, because it was a guy just sitting. That was Respawn, but it was a guy just sitting there. So we know at least about a Star Wars game, and then this other one we'll find out about, this open world game. So we'll see what happens, but it's a shame to see, obviously. Next up, let's talk about Halo. Not the video game, though. Let's talk about Halo the TV series. At least that's kind of where we are now, that Showtime has actually ordered a 10-episode first season. These episodes will be an hour long, and it will be done in a realistic fashion. So it's going to be live action, and that concerns me a little bit, but I would like to think they're bringing people in to actually build it and make it correct and not damage the series. Showtime's been pretty good with some of their stuff, so I at least have some confidence in them. Anyway, this was announced over on Xbox Wire, where they talk about Showtime did put that order in, and we're looking to go into production in 2019. So I'm not really sure when it would be coming out, maybe late 2019, early 2020, depending on when they want their release window to be. But it's at least exciting nonetheless, right? Because it's fun. The Halo series, if you don't read the books or anything, you're missing out on a lot of the lore. There is a massive universe there in terms of story. So they can pull from a couple of different spots with this story. And I'd like to see them do something maybe like what they did with Fall of Reach, possibly. Or maybe they try to do their own original story. I think I'd prefer to see Master Chief actually included in some way, even if they go back to when he originally was brought in as a kid and he kind of built up. That would be kind of cool to see in that light, but I also wouldn't mind them just jumping way forward in time and you have actual Master Chief, in the battlefield and they try to do something there. I don't know. Could be interesting. Let me know what you guys think about this possible, 10-episode live-action Halo, show that could be anything from the lore. Let me know what your best guess is as to where they'll take it. And our last bit of news, let's talk about more Nintendo trademarks, because why not? We always talk about Nintendo trademarks because we always hope that they are going to lead to something when they don't usually. Although sometimes they do. Let's be realistic here. Sometimes they do. We saw the Super Nintendo trademark where they did the controller. That turned into the Super Nintendo Classic. Nintendo Classic one, same thing there. So we, of course, like to keep an eye on the trademarks to see if anything interesting is going to be happening from them. And most recently, we did see Gamecube trademarks, and Japanese Nintendo had the full scoop on this. You're going to see some of the trademarks here. And what's interesting about this that they point out, and a lot of people got kind of excited about, they've applied for 3 new GameCube trademarks in Japan, and they're related to video gaming, not general merchandising like they usually do that might be used for controllers, stuff like that. The purposes include video game program and video game machine. I do think the video game machine could have something to do with something like the controller or just the adapter, but a video game program could have something more so to do with an emulator, or maybe they really do have that lined up for a virtual console type thing with their new subscription service. I don't think it's GameCube Classic related. That would be insane, by the way, if they did a GameCube Classic. I would have to give them a lot of money for that because I want that so bad now that I just said it out loud. But, can you imagine a GameCube Classic? That's what a lot of people are talking about now. We haven't even got the N64 Classic. So if we're going to see a GameCube Classic, let's get the N64 Classic out first. Although these would be trademarks that they might just be filing just to keep their trademarks under wraps. Just keep them. It's a possibility with that. I like to at least think about the possibilities of something else too, right? You could say, yeah, okay, they're getting the trademarks. Yeah, that's fine. Keep the expectations in check. But what if they did do a GameCube Classic? What would you want on the GameCube Classic? Obviously, they have a lot of stuff they could put on there because a lot of those games are theirs, but man, they could fill that out, and what would they even sell that for? That sell for like $150, but I would probably give them $150 for an HDMI-enabled GameCube Classic. That would be awesome. Let me know what you guys think about the possibilities of that down below, or you think, hey, trademarks, they're just covering their bases. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for Newswave today. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, guys. Really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave a bunch of comments down below about everything we talked about today, whether it is that GameCube trademark, or do you like the idea of a GameCube Classic, or do you want them to bring that to the Switch as part of that subscription service where they give us a GameCube game, maybe every other month or something. They switch them up or something. Here's Sunshine. Oh no, here's Melee. Here's your Fire Emblem, the one that's extremely expensive on the GameCube. There's a lot of cool stuff they could do, and I think I'd like to see that. What about the Halo TV series that Showtime has ordered? Are you concerned about it? Do you think they could possibly ruin it? Let me know what you guys think about that. And then the Star Wars game, of course, that EA decided to axe. Are you frustrated with that because you wanted a really, really sound, story-driven Star Wars game to go along with, of course, the shoot-'em-up Battlefronts and stuff? Let me know, guys, down below. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend, guys. Have some fun, play some games, and I'll see you guys back here 8 a.m. Eastern Time for Newswave on Monday morning.